Good day, you absolute legends. We have just concluded the pulse experiment. This experiment lasted over 5 days of continuous pulsing in a straight line in no man's sky. We started at a random part of the galaxy in a random system from the space station, and we pulsed 24 hours a day for 5 days straight. How far did we get, and what did we find along the way? Well, this is the conclusive report on the pulse experiment, and let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, what a journey. And I want to thank all you wonderful legends who tuned in for the live stream of the last 4 days of continuous pulsing as well. It was an incredible journey, and we've seen some amazing things. But what did we see? How far did we get? And what happens when you're that far out in deep space? Do we reach the other side? Is there a sun that we can reach? Did we break through the barrier? Well, in today's video, that's exactly what we are gonna answer. Now, not gonna bore you with the usual spiel today, ladies and gentlemen. We have way too much footage to go through. Like I said, I've got 5 days of it. So, as always, please double check for me. If you need to resubscribe, please do resubscribe. Or if you have been watching me for a while and you like what I do, then why not consider hitting that subscribe button? You definitely will not regret it. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right on into today's video. The ship that went on a crazy adventure, ladies and gentlemen, is this wonderful yellow and black squid ship. Now, as you can see, I started off here in the anomaly, right next to one of the space stations. And first of all, I just want to do a very quick test pulse to show you just how fast it is I am moving. You can see just by literally pulsing in a straight line just from one part to the other of this system, you can see just how fast we are truly going here. But we need to get more accurate measurements, so I'm going to line myself up to the sun as equal as I can get it, and then we're just going to pulse for it and we're just going to go. Now, one thing that we need to do is to go into first person view of the ship itself, and then we can start to get some readings. You can see right now on screen, we are in fact traveling incredibly fast, and we can use this measurement right here to determine how fast we go in 1 second. That is going to be vital to calculating the total distance, the true distance we traveled over the course of 5 days, but more on that later. Now, barely even 635,000 KS out, you can see that the game is already starting to flicker. Now, we have all of the scan lines right in front of us, as you would expect for pulsing, but things at this stage are already starting to flicker in and out of existence, and you'll realize that is one of the main themes in today's video. Now, I do need to give a warning here to anybody who is sensitive to flashing images or lights. That is going to be a common theme in this video, and it does get rather intense the further along in deep space we go. So if you are very prone to that kind of thing, then maybe this video, maybe skip it to the end. Now, after the very first hour of traveling in a straight line, you can see that things have already started to happen. We have lost the interior part of the ship. We can't see that anymore. That's gone, and we can only see the very front end of the ship. Also, the scan lines seem to be a lot more twitchy. But one of the observations I am also making in today's video and over the course of the experiment is the sun. We have taken a snippet, a capture of the sun from when we first seen it, when we first pulsed, to the very last time we seen it at the end of the experiment. Now, the question is, did the sun get any closer? Did it get further away, or did it stay exactly the same? I wanted this to answer a fundamental question, and one that has been debated a lot within the No Man's Sky community. Is the sun just a static image in the skybox and you can never reach it? Or is it somewhere that maybe does truly exist, but is just absolutely that far out that any other previous attempts has just been not able to reach it? So, if it's getting closer, it will prove the existence of the sun in No Man's Sky. If it stays the same, it'll prove the existence that it is just in the skybox. Or if it gets further away, then we can also take that as it maybe does exist, maybe it doesn't exist, but it is player tidal locked, and it'll only ever stay a certain amount of distance away from the player, and you'll never truly be able to reach it. So these are all of the questions in today's video on this part of the experiment that we are also also going to be answering today. Now, 3 hours into the experiment, you can see everything is becoming even more crazy, even more twitchy, and even more sporadic. Now, we can still see the front end of our ship, but the scan lines are starting to behave in crazy new ways, in crazy new patterns. Now, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, 12 hours has passed since the last update, and things are starting to get even more crazy. So first of all, we have what I like to call the pulsar effect. We have two straight lines of beams from left and right that are completely locked in, and every other scan line around that is absolutely twitching and going crazy. Another observation this far out is that we have completely lost the full sight of our ship. It's completely disappeared into the void. It is now invisible, but we are indeed truly still going forward. Exciting times. But another thing I'll be doing in today's experiment, when we get a little bit further ahead of ourselves, I'll be stopping in periodic intervals and taking measurements of the space station distance that is currently behind us. That way then we can keep on judging distance and what the in-game counter says how far we've got, and then I'll also be comparing that to a quick math equation on how far we have truly gone, and comparing the two and see if the in-game counter lines up with the true distance traveled. So again, very exciting stuff. Now, after 16 long hours of pulsing in a straight line, this is the pattern now that the scan lines are starting to take. Now, the reason for this could be up for debate, but my personal theory on this is that because we are so far out, the game engine is kind of freaking out and doesn't know what to make of the exact thing that we're doing, which is pulsing in a straight line. It's almost starting to struggle, so it's making geometric mathematical shapes, and they are going to become more prominent the further along that we go. We're also getting 3 strong snippets of light beams that are hitting our ships from the very center of the pulse. Now, these ships almost look like emojis, but they're not. They are just indeed pulses of light. Now, at the 24-hour mark, I decided to run a series of tests without stopping, obviously. Now, the first test I wanted to do was to go into my cockpit view and see if the ship appeared. That it did. However, strangely, still looking ahead makes the ship disappear, and I can only look at it at certain angles. If I move too far to the left or too far to the right, it would completely disappear on me once again. Also, I can zoom in and out in this view, which allows me to look at the cockpit itself, and I can look and see if the ship is starting to twitch or vibrate, which means that it is becoming incredibly more unstable as time goes on. However, this far out at 24 hours, I can conclude that the ship is still somewhat in a stable condition. So the next test I wanted to do was to go into third person and see what the ship would do. Now, as you can see on screen right now, ladies and gentlemen, it is totally freaking unhinged and crazy. At third person at 24 hours distance, with the amount that we travel so far, then it is virtually unstable. It's absolutely crazy. Also, in the 24th hour, we started to get what the stream dubbed the sky flower. Now you can see it making its appearance right now. Now, this is a convergence of geometric shapes in deep space with the scan lines, and it looks absolutely incredible. Now, this scan line pattern itself was absolutely magical to see on stream, and everybody was virtually praising it at the time. It almost became the god, the deity of the entire run. So the Skyflower, ladies and gentlemen, once again for those who was in the stream. But it didn't just stop there, because a little bit further into the 24th hour, we also got another geometric pattern. It just literally changes instantaneously, and we got this. Now, this was dubbed the Tesseract. So it's a 4D dimensional cube for anybody who is unsure what Tesseract is. And essentially, that's the kind of pattern that we were seeing at this point, and that's what the stream decided to call it. So there you go. So at the 34-hour mark, ladies and gentlemen, I decided to go ahead and use my photo mode while still pulsing, and I was able to capture this image. Now you can see the beam of light hitting the ship. It is incredible. Now, also at the 34-hour mark, ladies and gentlemen, I decided for the very first time since doing the experiment to stop pulsing turn around and look back on myself, and I looked at the space station from where I started. This will give us now a reading on how far we travelled in that time, and ladies and gentlemen, the distance did not disappoint. Now at the 70-hour mark, ladies and gentlemen, the shapes have just changed again in space, almost giving us like a galactic light show. It was incredible to behold. And also at this time, I took the opportunity to go into my galaxy map to see if we've got any further out or what has changed. Now you'll notice straight away that I'm in some kind of dark blue fog, and you'll see that all of the solar systems around the system that I'm currently in have completely disappeared. They're not there anymore, only the names do appear. And yes, of course, even this far out, I am still riding the light, which is, again, absolutely incredible, especially with how long it has passed, and being in third person still gives the same twitchy result. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at the 110-hour mark, we started to see some very strange artifacting, and at the time on stream, we was all debating on what this was and what it could possibly be. However, the answers would come soon enough. The very next time I stopped to do a distance check, this is what I was greeted with. I was encapsulated in a massive, mega-sized asteroid. The entire thing was covered all over my ship. I was directly in the center with what seemingly seemed to be no way out. And at the time I thought, okay, this was it. This was my run, and I wasn't able to escape. However, I did manage to finally break free and continue on the Pulse journey. But going forward, I knew that every time I stopped, this was going to always be the case. I would always be encapsulated in a giant mega-sized asteroid. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at the 120-hour mark, 5 days in total of 24 hours a day pulsing, I stopped the experiment. I had to call it at some point, and we reached a magnificent distance of 317 million plus KS away from the space station, from the Outlaw station from which I started. But now I had another conundrum. How was I going to get back? It was incredibly difficult to call even in the anomaly at this point, because it said planetary interference, even though we was, like I said, over 300 million KS away from the nearest planet. So that wasn't going to work initially. However, I did manage to call it in eventually, and yeah, you can see that I just get tidally locked. I get just about to the door of the anomaly itself, and then I get thrown back out into space, unable to move, forever drifting if I didn't intervene. So with no other options, I decided to go ahead and reload my save point. Luckily, the timestamp was from exactly where I left off. However, upon returning to the game, it projected me to one of the nearest planets, which was at this point over 300 million KS away. But then the game did something unexpected. It completely crashed on me. So I reloaded my autosave again once I was back in, and this is what I was greeted with. Now, loading back in gives some very incredibly strange results, is probably the best way to put it. I was just floating in deep space. But then I turned around and realized I was actually outside of my ship, and my ship was parked in deep space. It was actually physically parked, and I was able to jump inside of it. But at the time, I didn't know that I could jump inside of it because I was kind of panicking, freaking out what was going on. So I managed to get into camera mode to take a closer look to see if I could try and debug the issue. Now, straight away, you can just see weirdness. My staff is at the very front end of the ship. I have this really weird orb underneath my ship cockpit itself at the central column. But I was then just wondering what to do. So I looked back on myself, and eventually I managed to climb back inside of my ship and take off as if I was actually landed somewhere like in a space station, and the animations all run exactly the same way. Again, incredibly peculiar, but nonetheless, we was able to do that. But how was I going to escape this? Because I couldn't go ahead and use the anomaly. I couldn't go ahead and just pulse back to the space station, because I did try that too, thinking another thesis that we had on the live was that someone said, well, look, maybe you're not even traveling true distance. If you was to turn back on yourself and pulse back, then you could get back to where you was, if it's not true distance, within just a few minutes. I tried that, and it was true distance. We would have to travel back 5 days from where we started, which obviously at this point was completely off the table. I then ran into my next bunch of problems. First of all, I got stuck in this freighter that literally appeared from absolutely nowhere. And again, it was the most bugged out thing I have ever seen in No Man's Sky. In my entire history of playing this game and being on YouTube and making videos, I thought I knew everything there was to do about the game. But being this far out, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, all cards are off the table. Things do not act or behave the way that you would ever possibly expect them. Now, I could keep on breaking this freighter for as long as I wanted, and it would just keep appearing back on itself and or just staying there as a permanent fixture. So I knew at this point I was in some very deep doo-doo, and I had no way feasibly of getting back. There was, however, one other option. If I was to go ahead and install an emergency warp, would that finally get me out of the trouble of which I was in? And yes, of course, the asteroid made its appearance once again whilst I was trying to sort that out, and I got stuck in that too. But eventually, ladies and gentlemen, we got a warp drive fixed, and well, an emergency warp drive fixed, should I say, and we pulsed off into space, and hopefully this was going to be the one thing I could do to make this work. And I'm pleased to report that I did get back to a random system planet. I don't know if it was the same one. I think it was a different one. So obviously the next step I was going to take was call back in the anomaly. Now, once I called in anomaly and I was going ahead and land, I noticed that I was getting all of these different achievements from literally pulsing into space. At this point, I knew my game was completely bugged out, but I was getting all these new achievements, and I wasn't exactly going to say no to these new achievements for all the work that I have put in on this very video today. Now, we landed inside of the anomaly, and something strange happened again. Thinking that my ordeal was over, I realized that I was phasing still in and out of existence, and we was getting a weird silhouette of a planet just randomly appearing inside of the anomaly. It was again utterly bizarre. But that is a problem I will be fixing for another day. However, remember, during this pulse experiment, ladies and gentlemen, we did conduct some scientific goals in order to see A, how far we've got, and B, did we get any closer to the sun? So let's start running the numbers and find out exactly what's happened. So first of all, we have the sun. Did it get bigger, smaller, or did it stay the same? Now this is a still image I took from the very second I pulsed, from the very beginning of the 5-day pulse experiment. Now if we overlaid the last image of the sun that I got when I stopped the experiment, we'll be able to see if it got bigger, smaller, or stayed the same. So let's take a look. So for accuracy, I used a still from the live because I recorded and live streamed the entire event. So I used the live stream version here so then we can take a more deeper look into what's happening. And ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, it looks exactly the same. Yeah, it's gone down just a little bit of a smidgen of a degree, but that's probably due to the orientation from starting and stopping a few times for distance checks and so on. So the orientation will be out, but the size of the object has stayed exactly the same. Thus, in my mind, and this is probably going to be up for debate for a while, but I can confirm as far as to my knowledge that the sun is in fact not a reachable object, but it is a 2D static image that rotates with the stars in the system, and it is just a skybox essentially, and you're never able to truly reach it. So the sun in No Man's Sky essentially does not exist. Now, the big question is, how far did I travel? Now, I'm going to use the game's in-game counter to see how far I got, but I'm also going to be using a true distance of unit measurement to compare the two. So let's start with the game. We got 317,415,296 kilometers away from the outlaw station. But how many miles is that? And how many light years on the miles is that also? Well, we can use a very basic tool in order to find that out. So using Google, I put in the kilometers and then convert it over to miles. Now, in miles, we got an insane 197,232,720.90 miles. But if we now do the same thing, but we convert it from miles to light years, this is what we end up with. So using Google's calculator once again, I inputted the miles and we got a total distance for light years of 3.35 light years, which is an insane, unfathomable distance in real life terms. But how does the in-game counter hold up? Does it show the true distance? Well, that is now what we're going to go ahead and calculate. So at the beginning of today's video, I showed the cockpit and how many kilometers per second we was traveling. Now, I can record the distance of how much goes up by 1 second, and then we can do the math from there. Now, using my own editing software, I can now go by the frames and have a look how much the numbers go up between the 2030 mark and the 2031 mark for 1 second. Now, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we get an estimate of around about 1300 kilometers per second. So if we put in our base parameter here of 1,300 kilometers per second and we times that by 60 for 60 seconds in a minute, we get 7,800. Times that by 60 again, and we get this 4,680,000. Now we're going to times it by 120 hours or 120 for 5 days total of pulsing in a straight line. Now we're going to copy that number because this is for the kilometers traveled, and we're going to convert that now into miles. And now we need to copy the miles and convert it into light years. So the true distance traveled on this experiment, ladies and gentlemen, in real world terms is a total of 5.936 light years, which is absolutely incredible. Now, I'm sure this distance is going to be debated. In fact, a chap called Sins Arcade was helping me out with the equation. Now, he come up with a different thesis on how far I traveled. Now, this was his view and his calculations on the distance traveled total. But let me know in the comment section down below, ladies and gentlemen, what is your equation? What is your theories about this? How far do you think I got? Do you agree with my assessment on using just the basic face value of the experiment and conducting it accordingly through Google Calculator? Do you have a different theory entirely? Let me know. Were you surprised by any of the results this far out into space? Let me know everything in the comment section down below. And ladies and gentlemen, just before I let you go today, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who jumped in on the live streams, showing your support and watching this amazing journey as it unfolded. We explored the universe in never before seen ways, and it is all documented on the channel now forever. But yeah, thank you. You are all absolute legends. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's everything from me here today, and as always, my name is Professor Cynical, and I'll catch you all again in the next one. Bye for now.